Raghav never imagined that life would twist itself into such a tight knot so quickly. Just a year earlier, he had been a quiet man with a small, happy family, a wife who hummed old songs while working, a son who insisted on asking 10 questions a minute, and a house that was messy in the best possible ways. But life has a strange way of testing those who least expect it. When his wife fell ill and passed away, suddenly and brutally, the world shrank around him, holding him in a grip so tight he felt he could barely breathe. People offered condolences, neighbors brought food, relatives made promises they didn't intend to keep. Yet after everyone left, it was only him and his 7-year-old son, Arav, sitting in the dim glow of a house that felt far too silent. Bills piled on the table like tiny monsters smirking at him. The landlord's notice hung on the door. The savings account balance looked like a joke. Raghav knew he needed work, any work, but he also needed to stay close to home for Arav. And that combination felt impossible. He searched everywhere. Construction sites, warehouses, delivery services. No one wanted someone who needed flexible hours, someone who might need to run back home if his child suddenly needed him. Employers didn't say it out loud, but their stiff smiles said enough. Single father. Too much risk. Finally, after weeks of rejection, someone mentioned a job that nobody wanted. Night school janitor at the old Hillview Learning Center, a half-abandoned building that smelled like chalk dust and rusted pipes. The pay was low, the hours were odd, and the place had a reputation for being creepy. People told stories. Doors closing on their own, lights flickering, footsteps echoing in empty halls. Raghav didn't care. He needed income, and he needed to be able to bring Arav along and keep him nearby. If the ghosts wanted to share the building, they could. Ghosts didn't send eviction notices. On the first night, when the sun dipped behind the hills and the school transformed into long shadows and humming silence, Raghav held Arav's hand and walked inside. The building immediately felt different from what he expected, not haunted, but forgotten. Desks lined up like abandoned soldiers, chalkboards smeared with faded equations, posters peeling at the edges. Raghav gave Arav a small corner of the teacher's lounge with coloring books and snacks, kissed his forehead, and began sweeping. The night stretched long. The sound of the broom brushing against the floor echoed through the hallways like whispers. Yet strangely, the work felt peaceful. Hard, but peaceful. There was something comforting about fixing a place no one cared about anymore. Something satisfying about wiping away dust that had collected for years. One night, about 2 weeks into the job, something changed. Arav, who usually stayed quietly in his corner, had begun wandering the halls. Not out of boredom but curiosity. Children always sense the energy of a place better than adults. That night, he found a small door behind a stack of broken chairs. It wasn't locked, it just resisted, as though unused for decades. When he finally pushed it open, he found a narrow staircase leading down. Against his better judgment but driven by that unstoppable childlike instinct to explore, he took a few steps, until he saw something glowing. A warm, soft light, like a lantern. He called his father immediately. Raghav hurried to him with a mix of fear and irritation, ready to scold him, but when he saw the glow, his anger dissolved. They walked down together. At the bottom was a small basement room, but not dusty or forgotten like the rest of the building. It was arranged like someone had recently used it, a table with notebooks, shelves with old teaching aids, and on one side, a wooden box filled with small, hand-crafted toys. But the strangest thing was a framed photograph on the wall, a smiling woman surrounded by children. A plaque beneath it read, Miss Kumar, Hillview's Heart. Raghav recognized the name. She was a teacher from decades ago, known for creating free classes for underprivileged children after school. She died young, people said, but her students had always sworn that she never truly left the school. Arav walked straight to the wooden box. Papa, look, he exclaimed. Inside the box were toys carved with intricate patterns, a train, a spinning top, tiny animal figures. Raghav picked up one. It fit perfectly in his palm, smooth and polished, as though crafted with love. Something about the room felt alive, not frightening, but warm, almost grateful that someone had opened the door. As they explored more, they found bundles of worksheets, notebooks filled with encouraging messages written in flowing handwriting, and a set of books labeled for children who needed extra help with reading. It was as if the room had been waiting for someone. The next night, Raghav brought Arav back to the basement room intentionally. They lit the old lantern, sat at the table, and read the notes left by Miss Kumar. They were simple instructions, lesson plans, and reminders for herself, but they felt like messages crafted for the future, like she had known someone would find them one day. Slowly, a routine formed. While Raghav cleaned the classrooms upstairs, Arav would practice reading and writing downstairs in the warm glow of the lantern, using the materials left behind. Sometimes he would play with the wooden toys. Sometimes he would ask questions about Miss Kumar, convinced she was still watching over them. And increasingly, Raghav noticed something extraordinary. Arav's grades began improving at school. His teachers commented on his handwriting, his focus, his confidence. Something in that quiet basement room was helping his son heal, learn, and grow. One night, Raghav found a letter tucked behind the photograph frame. It wasn't addressed to anyone specific. The paper had aged, but the ink was still readable. It said, "To whoever finds this, remember that learning is a light that never dies. If you are here, it means you care. About a child, about hope, about the future. Use whatever you find here. Love is the legacy we leave behind." Raghav stood there for a long moment, staring at the words. He felt something break open inside him. For months he had been carrying his grief like a heavy stone, refusing to let it move. But here, in this quiet forgotten room, someone who had never met him had left a message that felt like it was meant for him. The job no one wanted slowly became the center of his life. Not because of the money. It barely covered their expenses, but because it gave him something invaluable: purpose. The school was empty, but it no longer felt lonely. Every night, Raghav restored something: a bulletin board, a broken shelf, a wall that needed paint. And as he restored the building, he restored himself. Arav helped, too. Sometimes he would sit in the principal's chair pretending to run the school. Sometimes he would read Miss Kumar's old stories aloud. The school became their shelter, their second home, their place of healing. After months of working quietly, Raghav began suggesting improvements to the school's old management. He wasn't trying to show off, he just cared. He fixed the projector in the auditorium, rewired the lights in the science room, repainted the art classroom with leftover supplies. The school board, surprised by the sudden improvement in a place they had nearly written off, visited one day to investigate. They found the place transformed, clean, vibrant, cared for. They found a janitor who treated the building like a living thing. And they found a little boy teaching himself from old materials, smiling more brightly than any student they had seen in years. The board called Raghav in for a meeting. He thought he was about to be scolded for accessing rooms he shouldn't have, or worse, fired. Instead, they offered him a new role: part-time caretaker and assistant coordinator for after-school programs. A promotion, a salary increase, better hours, and the chance to start a small reading club using the basement room that had helped his son. Raghav felt tears sting his eyes, tears he had held back for too long. Arav hugged him tightly, whispering, "Papa, we did it." The reading club began small, just 2 children at first. But word spread, and soon 10 children came. Then 15. Parents thanked Raghav for giving their children a safe, warm space to learn after school. Then one evening, an elderly woman arrived at the club walking slowly with a cane. She was in her late 70s, her eyes shining with recognition. "I heard," she said softly, "that someone found Miss Kumar's room." She introduced herself as one of Miss Kumar's former students, the one who had taken the photograph of her decades ago. She always said the school would guide the right people, the woman said. Looks like she was right. That night, after the club ended and the children left, Raghav walked to the basement room alone. He lit the lantern. He looked at the photograph. "Thank you," he whispered. And for the first time in many months, he didn't feel alone. He felt watched over. Not in a haunting way, but in a comforting way, as though kindness could linger in a place long after a person was gone. Life didn't magically become perfect. Bills still needed paying, mornings were still hectic, and Raghav still felt the ache of losing his wife. But he now had a purpose greater than survival. He had a community, he had hope, and he had a job that, against all expectations, had become the best decision of his life.